Welcome back to On the Move with Victor Shi. This is still Victor Shi. It is Tuesday, January 17th, 2023, and today we're going to be talking about the British royal family and specifically the deep racist elements that were a part of its formation and continue to this day, as we've seen with the Meghan and Harry story. We'll talk about what that history is, what reforms the monarchy and royal family need, the role of the British tabloids as well, and what we can learn from Meghan and Harry. I'm so glad to be joined by one of the leading voices on this subject, Dr. Shola Mos-Shogbamimu. She is a women's and civil rights activist and author of a wonderful book, which you can see in her background, called "This Is Why I Resist, Don't Define My Black Identity." Thank you so much for being here. It's so great to see you.
Hello, is it me you're looking for? I just thought, let me just wake you all up properly on Tuesday, although it's a Tuesday afternoon here. Hello, thank you for having me, Victor.
Of course, yeah, you're calling in from London, which is exciting. You don't really usually get international callers, but this is amazing.
Good to be here.
So let's talk about the British royal family. But before we get into what happened with Meghan and Harry, I want to take a step back for maybe those in my generation, or maybe anyone who doesn't really know that much about the British royal family, and ask you about the formation of that. First, walk us through what the goals of that, I guess, institution monarchy were and their role in England.
Well, like many of you watching right now, I was born into this system, okay? When we all got born, there's a British royal family. All right, what's their relevance? I think the reality is that at some point over the past few centuries, the British people decided that, look, the way we want to be governed and we want to self-govern is have a head of state as the monarch, as opposed to the monarchy ruling us, while we have what we call, the House of Commons with elected members of Parliament and the House of Lords, still representing kind of like the elites, right?
Yeah.
And the British royal family have been around for centuries upon centuries, and I suppose their relevance has been very much the same. They do amass power, they represent power. They tend to be used today as a charm offensive for political reasons. So, for instance, when Britain entertained Donald Trump, and I think he came over for like 2 visits in order to appease and massage his ego. What did they do? They used Buckingham Palace and all of the aura of, oh my God, royalty, to kind of make him feel important about himself. Anyway, I think the long and short of it is that the British royal family has been part of the tradition of British, of Britain for a very, very long time. But I think for many of us now in the 21st century, and they should have been asking this question a long time ago, which is, what is the relevance of the British monarchy today? Because they do, the institution that is the monarchy symbolizes the entrenched structural inequalities, whether it's class, whether it's race, economic inequality. They represent all of that in one go, right? People like to say, oh, but it is all ceremonial, Dr. Shola. They don't really have any power. Utter nonsense. They've got plenty of power. To the extent that, the Queen, as we know, is the longest reigning monarch. And during her time, they were able to amass exemptions from all kinds of discrimination laws, race discrimination laws, sex discrimination laws, and so many more. Does that sound like somebody without power? No, that sounds like somebody with power who does not want to be held accountable.
So it's fascinating hearing you say that. And I will have to admit, most of my actual knowledge about the British royal family comes from The Crown. And I know The Crown is a bit dramatic in terms of how it frames the British royal family, but a lot of those things I learned from The Crown, and things like this season, Diana, it seems like that was the first incident, and correct me if I'm wrong, where it seemed like this big public incident, at least in modern history, where someone who isn't part of, I guess, quote, the blood of the British royal family is treated as outcasts and different. And so I'm curious if you can tell us a little bit about that incident and what it reveals about the British royal family's treatment of those who may be deemed as, outsiders or maybe not a part of the blood of the royal family.
I think what The Crown has done well is to reflect to some extent, because people say, people go, oh, it's fiction, it's fiction. I'm like, well, it's fiction based on fact, and fact that is public knowledge, to a large extent. And I think what they've done well is to reflect the conduct, behavior, and the personalities of members of the royal family, as opposed to just what the institution is. So it's almost like you're getting an inside, a bird's eye view. It's possibly what they could have said or what they could have done. Princess Diana's treatment, I do not believe, was the first in which they treated somebody outside the way they did her. I think what we do know is that by the time Princess Diana came along, I think because of the love and warmth Princess Diana had amassed around the world, and not just within the United Kingdom, but around the world, there was no way the royal family could shield itself under this whole, we're royalty and we're above everybody else, from the backlash they experienced from from society. So for instance, when Princess Diana died, people were like, what the hell are you doing? Yeah. Here we are mourning, and you're sitting there in your, palaces and castles saying nothing, as though she means nothing, or as though our grief means nothing. And I think that's one of the first times you see that the public literally pressured the Queen and the royal family to react and come out and say something. So you can see that there is that power that the public has. So what Diana did, and Diana, to be fair to her, she came in an age where, from television, as an example, to, there wasn't really a lot of social media, but even the way the print media had power and people had access to information in a way that they did not have in Queen Elizabeth's time or previous, monarchs. In Diana's time, we had so much access to information. And I think that also helped to shape how people viewed the royal family. But now social media, it's gone up the scale, because now no one is relying on mainstream media. People are talking and exchanging information. And I think that what they did with Diana, which we can clearly see, has been translated and transmitted to what's with Meghan, except with Meghan, it's the race element.
Exactly.
You have to bear in mind how they've treated other people that we are not aware of.
So I want to get more into Meghan, because like you said, there's a new thing that's a part of Meghan. I mean, everything is the same about her as Diana, except for the fact that she is a Black person. So I'm wondering what you think her race had to do with the British royal family's treatment of her. And also, I mean, I watched the Harry and Meghan documentary. I mean, the level of perniciousness that the British tabloids treated her was, just so disgusting and so revolting. So I'm wondering first, how the British royal family saw her as a Black person and a Black woman, and what you thought their end goal was in all of this, and kind of how Meghan responded to that.
I do not, for the life of me, I cannot begin to understand how a so-called royal family can, in the 21st century, not recognize opportunity and assets when they see it. So when Meghan Markle came along, an independent, educated, successful, ambitious, strong, biracial woman comes along, I'm thinking they should go, well, hold up. She's got skills. She, presents herself well. She's independent. She's independently wealthy. This is an addition that we should celebrate. But what they did was what they tried to do to Diana. And as we've seen, they tried to do to other women, which is you come in and it seems like they suffocate you. They're like, no, you are going to have to conform to how we expect you to be, as opposed to let us adapt and learn along the way with you. Meghan Markle is biracial. And for a lot of people that do not understand the race element of the abuse and the hate that she's got, they go, oh, no, but she doesn't look Black. I'm like, what the heck's wrong with people? Have you never heard of the one drop Black rule, where just having a drop of Blackness in your body, that actually that's one of the things that white supremacy fights against. Like you're too Black. Even though she's very fair, you are too Black for us. And it's all part of it. The fact that the royal family has not, to date, Victor, never defended Meghan Markle publicly against any of the abuse, the hate, the racism she's experienced, that tells you a lot. It doesn't take a lot to go, but why haven't you done that? This is
Right,
like
right.
6 years. So even if anyone wants to excuse their behavior or go, oh, it's a dignified silence, well, I can quickly point you to times that they have spoken out. They spoke out in defense of Prince Andrew, who was, accused of allegedly having, sexual abuse, sexual misconduct of a 17-year-old. These
Oh,
are things
yep.
that just, it beggars belief. They've issued out statements for other members of the family, but your biracial daughter-in-law, biracial sister-in-law is left out there to hang out, to dry. It's like they're literally feeding her to the wolves.
I mean, there is this kind of pattern of the British royal family and monarchy, which is that, I mean, they are so resistant to any type of reform or change. Is that just a product of white supremacy and this kind of perpetuation of the power they wish to seek?
Bang on right. Absolutely. That's it right there. Because if you think about it, the paradigm of white supremacy is at the very root of the power and wealth of the British royal family. So reform for them is oppression.
Oh.
Reform for them is oppression. People like to pay lip service, and they like to pay lip service to all this. Oh, we stand against racism. Oh, we stand for equality. Oh, we can't say anything. I'm like,
Right,
no,
right.
first of all, that's incorrect. You are meant to work for the people, not the other way around. So when you do not have a head of state that can stand up and speak up for the things that particularly matter to you and are important for your life and your liberty, you know that they do not have your best interests at heart. I mentioned
Right,
the fact
right.
that they got these exemptions from discrimination laws.
Hmm.
The fact that every single time, every opportunity they get, look at when we had the Black Lives Matter protests.
Yeah, yeah.
Nothing, absolutely nil point from the royal family. Look at when we had the Windrush scandal. The Windrush scandal, it's the fact that the Windrush generation came here in the 60s and 70s to save this country, the United Kingdom, because they did not have enough labor, they did not have enough skills, particularly after the Second World War. And I think Windrush also came in the 50s, if I'm correct. And what they then did was to kick them out, kick out their descendants, kick out the the Windrush generation, treating them as though they are not British citizens. They were British subjects when they answered the call from the motherland to come and help and start a whole new life. They came in here and they were welcomed with signs of no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. They helped to build up a lot of the institutions that we have today, whether it's the National Health Service,
Hmm.
all of the infrastructures you see today. The Windrush generation were part and parcel of making it stronger and better. And what they did was to deport a lot of Windrush generation descendants, treating them like they're not British citizens.
Yeah.
Hostile environment. Did the royal family say anything? Absolutely not. And now you find that a number of Afro-Caribbean countries are removing the British royal family or the British monarch as their head of state. They say, okay, we
Right,
don't want you
right.
anymore. And then people are raising a whole lot of noise about it. But I'm like, what did the British monarch ever do for any of these countries? When did it ever treat
Exactly.
these countries equal to the British people? Never. This is the
And,
point.
and exactly. I mean, one of the most important functions, maybe we can end on this, that I think Harry and Meghan play is changing the perception around the British royal family. And I'm wondering, how do you think people should view and think of the British royal family after everything we've seen so far? And how big of a role does, public sentiment and public support play in reforming that and how we kind of treat and view the British royal family?
So let me start with your last question. I think
Yeah.
public sentiment and view has real power if the British people choose to use it.
Hmm.
The royal family cannot escape from negative, I would say, any negative perception that the British public has of them. The moment they get a sense of it, they want to quickly do something to kind of appease the public because they know that their entire existence as an institution is literally simply because the British public are still happy. Well, some are still happy to have the monarchy. The reality, Victor, is this: as far as I can see, The family that forms the British monarchy, it's when we talk about reform, we're talking about the fact that a lot of the things that they do today, whether it is the issues around Prince Andrew or the fact that there are members of the family who are not senior working royals, but I'm sure use their titles and their positions to amass wealth, right? The reality is there is no transparency or accountability. That is problematic.
Right.
And you cannot separate the institution from the family because the family is the institution is the family. And as long as we have, as a head of state, a set of people that sit above us, that are not transparent, not accountable, but continue to, get benefits from society without giving back, that is questionable. People go, oh, but they give back. I'm saying, how? Is that, are they giving back because they're shaking hands? I can shake your hand. Are they giving back because they go visit schools and attend meetings and immediately people throw at you the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth is such a legacy of the Queen. The Commonwealth is British Empire recycled. That's it, because there is nothing common about the wealth of the Commonwealth. They simply just went from, oh, we need to still keep, we still need to keep a sense of being head of state of this country and that country. And if you look at the Commonwealth properly, you'll realize that there's that structural inequality. And again, when we talk about white supremacy, the wealth of predominantly white nations versus the former colonized nations and the black and brown nations that are part of the Commonwealth. Again,
wow, that is such an interesting view, and Dr. Shola, I'm so grateful that you joined us today and shed some light on this important issue. And I hope everyone takes a moment. I know a lot of people dismiss Harry and Meghan because they find them unrelatable, but I do think the documentary. I haven't read the book yet, but I do think the documentary does a really important job in showing just how problematic of an institution the British royal family and monarchy are. And so we thank you for all of your work and all of what you do to shine a light on this. So thank you, and thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, that was fascinating. I just have a few bits of news for the day so far. Nothing too big. But first is this week marks the 2-year anniversary of when President Biden was sworn in. And so I'm sure we will see a lot from the Democratic Party as well as the White House in terms of the accomplishments that he's been able to do over the last 2 years. I think it's quite remarkable, actually, if you look at the fact that it hasn't even been exactly 2 years. I mean, this is the week that I think is going to mark that. But I mean, it's quite remarkable. Everything he's passed, from the Inflation Reduction Act to the infrastructure package. There's been a lot of really significant accomplishments. I think we sometimes lose sight of the fact that it hasn't even been 2 years. This is someone who has worked in a pretty much evenly divided Senate, maybe even more swinging toward the Republican side because of Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. But basically, against all odds, he's been able to pass these historic bills. And so this week will be one of, I think, great importance for this administration to really reflect on those last 2 years and to go ahead on what's to come for the next 2 years. The next thing I wanted to mention is a bit of a more sad piece of news, and that's there's a stat yesterday that showed that in the past 17 days, there's been more than 30 mass shootings. And so that's, almost 2 a day, if you think about it that way. And so it's really concerning. We've seen some horrific videos. Shannon Watts posted one video of basically a child walking around with a gun in an apartment complex. And it's like, we have to have safe gun storage measures. We have to have common sense gun reform. This is a Congress that I know my generation is going to be paying attention to a lot, because we'll see whether or not Republicans actually care about lives and care about our safeties and care about our futures. And so I think it's going to be a defining moment for this Congress to act on gun violence and gun reform, because what we're seeing right now is concerning. It doesn't seem to be letting back, and we are in desperate need of common sense gun reform. Things like banning military assault weapons. I mean, no one should have that. So those are the type of things that I hope that everyone will push for. You can make any calls to your senators or representatives, write them letters. I mean, this impacts all of us. And so it's I was sad reading that piece of news, and it also just kind of reaffirms this nation's problematic gun culture, and we need to change that. And one last thing, more of an international perspective, China's population fell for the first time since 1961, which I thought was interesting. It's been decades, and they're now at a negative population growth rate, which is expected to impact the economy and a lot of jobs. And so that's more of like an international outlook, and I just found it to be particularly relevant because both of my parents are from China, and so they are definitely going through a lot right now. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of On the Move. Just a quick programming note. Tomorrow we'll be joined by Marcus Flowers, who, as you may know, ran against Marjorie Taylor Greene. We'll talk about why Marjorie Taylor Greene is so successful in her district and what we can do bring facts and truth to voters, because that's more important now than ever before, and what it'll take to beat someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene. We'll then talk to S.E. Cupp on Thursday about the Republican Party, and then on Friday, we'll talk to newly elected Congresswoman Summer Lee from Pennsylvania, who maybe she represents you if you're listening to this right now. It'll be an exciting week of On the Move ahead, so don't miss it. We'll be back every day at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, right here on youtube.com/Politicon. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. I will see you all tomorrow. In the meantime, have a great and wonderful day.